A little over a year and a half ago, I started the rear suspension on the frame that would go on to become the scrapyard drag truck. I've done a lot to this project over the last little bit, but there's one thing I haven't finished up out back, which we're going to get to today. Just quick overview of this project. It's an 03 Silverado, obviously multicolored because it came from several different trucks that I've parted out. It's got a 535 big block under the hood. It's going to have a 4L80 in the middle. It's got a 14-bolt semi-floater out back. Out front, we've got some tubular control arms. We've got some aluminum knuckles from like a 2014, 2015 Silverado. We've got some custom coilover mounts that I built, which are a little bit rusty now since it hasn't been painted. We've got some Viking Crusaders up front, and the only thing missing out back is a matching pair of shocks. So today, that's what we are going to square away. A lot of drag race guys will go the 4-link style suspension, and I wanted to try the split monoleaf because they're a little bit simple and they seem to work very good. So that's what we're doing. We've got the Calvert Racing split mono. As you can see, there's a front spring that stops. There's a rear spring that starts and goes all the way back there. These are Funkhouser race cars spring sliders. They use just a little bearing and that slides back and forth. I believe this is also from Funkhouser. We've got an anti-roll bar, and I guess that kind of gives it away, but today we are going to be installing the shocks. A long time ago, when I moved this cross member, I installed the Atomic Fab upper shock mounts, which are those guys right there. And today I'm going to be installing an adjustable height lower shock mount. I just picked these guys up off, let me try that again. I just picked these guys up off of Amazon, and they're just like a $30 mount, but they're pretty beefy. They got a 1/4-inch bracket that will weld onto the axle tube, and then they got this adjustable thing down here. So I'm just gonna get these cleaned up, get the axle tube welded up, and we'll stitch them onto the frame. Now, the reason I'm doing this now is because this is kind of like the last bit of chassis and suspension work that I want to get done while the truck's in the bay and on the lift, because I think in the very next episode you guys see, we're going to bring the S10 in and we're going to start the custom 3-link rear end, and I need my lift to do so. So let's get to work. I already mocked these up just kind of in position on the axle. I don't need these 2 bottom holes, and so rather than just leaving them sticking out, I'm just going to cut them off. That works actually really nicely. The only reason I don't like using the like a flap wheel on that is it kind of makes the surface uneven. You probably can't tell, but I did that when I stripped the paint over here. But a little DA action makes it nice and smooth. So the shock right now is not straight up and down, but it's actually square to the center line of the truck because the thing sits about 1 degree off on the lift. So, all right, now at least it's up and down where it needs to be. I've already cycled it. Actually, I'll show you it right now. It's tight against the frame, tight against the roll bar, but not gonna hit. Now this part is mainly for aesthetics. See if I can do it so you guys can see it, but I want to make sure the back of the bracket is parallel with the back of the diff. So 2.4 degrees with a down arrow. Okay, that's where it's going to live. Aha! Got it. Close. Seems like this angle finder always... There we go. 2.1. 2.0. Within a tenth. Close enough in my book for a shock mount. Look at that. So I've got both shock tabs or mounts tack welded onto the axle, and I just put one shock in, lowered the truck down to the ground, just kind of cycled the suspension to make sure everything clears. There's a lot going on back here in terms of the suspension that just takes up real estate. You know, we've got, well, first of all, we got the fuel tank that I built everything around. We moved all the cross members. We've got the anti-roll bar to contend with to make sure nothing hits there. But luckily where we have everything right now, we've got space. So with the suspension all the way cycled, the body of the shock clears. I've got probably 3/4 of an inch between the end of the anti-roll bar here. In terms of shock travel, oh, by the way, I did get these from my buddy Brent Lossum, which by the way, he has got a really awesome extended cab drag truck similar to this. He's got a 427 LS in it, I believe, single turbo. Runs in the 8s, and if you need a 4L80 that is built to withstand some crazy power, definitely check him out. I'll try to put some contact info down below for Brent. But anyway, Brent supplied the shocks because he was going to put them on his truck, but he 4-linked it instead. And so of course with a smooth body shock like this, you can't run a coilover. So anyway, these are Crusaders, and they are going to work perfectly for the Cal tracks we got back there. I have Crusaders up front. I probably already mentioned that. But anyway, now that the shock is in, I kind of distracted my Mustang probably. Anyway, now that the shocks are in, I started kind of going down that mock-up in my brain. Like if you guys, this is gonna be a dumb reference, but if you've ever seen the, it was on Netflix, it's called The King's Gambit. It's about this girl that plays chess. But anyway, she does this thing where she can like, I think she was on drugs, but that's beside the point. She like visualizes all these chess pieces moving, and not exactly the same thing, but that's kind of what my brain does when it comes to projects like this. And I just kind of went down that path trying to figure out exhaust. Now, if you know me, you know that I'm absolutely stubborn and I do things that don't make a lot of sense sometimes. And one of those things that I have in mind for this truck is I want to run full exhaust all the way to the back. You know, yeah, a lot of guys will just run the exhaust out the hood or out the fenders or whatever. And that's cool, there's nothing wrong with that. But I want this to be like a mega sleeper. Like I don't want the exhaust coming out the hood. Like, sure, maybe I'll make an extra downpipe or like a dump that just comes out the hood and run no hood for some events, but I want to be able to have full exhaust and run all the way out the back. And you know, in case of say a motor failure at a track or something, I don't want the exhaust dumping in front of the tires because let's say oil, you know, sprays out or whatever, or you know, we blow a head gasket, some moisture comes out the exhaust. I want to run full exhaust all the way to the back. So in a roundabout way, I guess what I was getting at is now that the shocks are in, I can kind of start to visualize it. Back here, Yeah, there's a lot going on, but I think when I was laying on the ground with the suspension compressed, I have enough room to run the exhaust kind of up this way, inside this cavity here between the anti-roll bar and the axle. There should be just enough room because I kind of had this little piece of pipe here. So I'll kind of come out, maybe sort of kind of like that, and go towards the outside and have another elbow kind of like this. And then ultimately, what my dream is for the exhaust to exit beside the fuel tank, kind of pointed out to the side, just like that, with one on each side. So that's my goal, and like I said, I just spent the last little while trying to visualize it. The back will be easy. The front, though, specifically this side, excuse me, is gonna be a challenge, just because we're gonna have headers with probably a 2-inch primary going up and forward. But then the downpipe on this side is going to be really tight because we've got to come down here along the floorboard, stay above the bottom of the frame. But we also have to make sure we leave room for a drive shaft for the front axle. And then I'm probably also going to need to run a drive shaft loop. And anyway, so that's just kind of where my brain went. Sorry for the dumb reference. But anyway, back to the shocks. Now that I have verified everything fits and does what it should, I can burn these in for good. I am going to loosen up the axle and just kind of turn it so it makes it a little bit easier to get in position and weld these. I am not as comfortable with the MIG welder as I am with the TIG, so just to make it be the best that I can, it's easier just to drop the axle, pivot it a little bit, and give myself a little bit more room. Oh, and then the final thing we have to weld on the axle, not today, that's going to be like one of the last things on the truck, is just welding the spring perches on, because that's actually going to set the pinion angle. Right now it's just kind of sitting in there bolted in place. But once the truck is done, we have all the weight on it, we have a transfer case in there, then I can just kind of dial in the pinion angles and weld those in. So anyway, let's weld the shock mounts. I have just placed the last order I need for the 3-link stuff on the S10, and I think, or I hope, you guys are gonna like it. It's gonna be a pretty cool setup. We'll show you when it all gets here, but we're doing a mixture of like off-road and street rod parts. It's gonna have a lot of adjustability built into it, so I'm really excited to get that one started. These Escalade 17s are surprisingly light. Too bad they can't fit a wider tire on. All right, one last project. These are the arms that actually hold the bottom of the shock, but these have a weird spacing on them. They're 1 3/8 of an inch, where the bottom of the shock is 1 1/4 inches. Now these are available in inch, 1 1/4 inches, 1.5 inches, but none of that is going to be the right spacing. And of course, don't forget there's the piece in the middle. So instead of like just putting some washers in there, which would work, I'm going to do that, except I'm going to weld them just on the inside like so. We'll use the TIG machine. I've got 2 done already. They're just going to kind of look like that. So just clean it up, weld it in, put some more edge primer on those guys, and we'll bolt the shocks in for semi-permanent mock-up mode. I mean, it wouldn't be a project without getting the TIG welder out, right? Now the bracket does have this flat spot up top where the washer kind of overlaps a little bit, so I'll just like grind that flat and run a little bead across the top. You never forget when you have the hole in your glove. Yeah. That's gonna burn. I love the TIG welder. Sound of name. Black as night now. Side. Yup. And of course, on final assembly, we are going to replace all this hardware so it all matches. It'll be grade 8. But for now, this is, again, kind of a mock-up phase. So the welds have cooled down, the primer has cured a little bit, and the shocks are bolted in place. I did a quick travel test and everything looks like it's functioning as it is intended to. So I'm really happy. That's one more little, yeah, I know it's a little project, but one more little thing knocked off the to-do list for the four-wheel drive drag truck. Now, I know a lot of you guys probably wish this stuff would go quicker, and believe me, I do too. when I bought this shop, I never thought that it would take up so much time. I should have, and rightfully so, but we got a lot of plates that we're trying to juggle, and I think in the long run, I think it's gonna be worth it. But just when it comes to stuff like this, sadly, it does take a little bit of a back burner to that, which a lot of you guys don't really care to see that. I don't really make content about the actual shop, but that's just kind of what's going on in my life right now. Hopefully things will change soon where we can spend a little bit more time doing content for you, but overall, no complaints, life is good. We've got a lot of work left to do on this drag truck project. I think the very next thing that I want to tackle is probably under here. I want to get the intake thrown on, but then I need to do some mock-up, or a fabrication, I should say. We need to build some turbo manifolds. We need to build the downpipes. I need to get an intercooler mounted and a whole bunch of stuff. And kind of the reason I've been holding off on that is mainly the dollars, because I got to get a pair of turbos and I got to get a big old pallet of just stainless fabrication stuff. And believe me, it's not cheap. And I'm still trying to, do some other projects at the same time. So the next thing you guys see on the channel here is probably going to be the S10. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I've got the 3-link stuff on the way. We've got the LS swap that we're going to try to tackle as soon as the 3-link is done. And my goal for the S10, I'd really love to take it to LS Fest in Bowling Green this fall. I think that's, let's see, we got June, July, August, and pretty much 3 months. So I don't know if we will make it, but I'm just going to put it out there in the universe. That's my goal. And my goal for the drag truck is simply to have it fired up by the end of the year. This is kind of more of the long term, and the S10 Autocross Pro Touring, whatever you want to call it, truck, that's kind of my short-term goal. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. It just started raining and my windows are down, so I'm going to go take care of that. Thank you so much. Come back soon.